Gatorade bottles and candy wrappers in his backpack because my friend bought it for it, but you're not supposed to be eating that. So
Exactly.
it defeats the purpose. Diet changes is really hard to do.
Welcome to A Sister's Love, the podcast that helps women who are healing by having those deep conversations, giving practical advice and words of encouragement. Come on, let's talk about it. Hello, my beautiful sisters. Welcome back to another episode of A Sister's Love podcast. On this episode of A Sister's Love podcast, we have a beautiful guest. Her name is Dr. O, and she is here to talk to us about trauma and a trauma based on an individuality, like based on how trauma can affect you as an individual and give us some skills and some things that we could do to help us address that. But before we get into that, I would love to introduce myself. I am your host here at A Sisters Love Podcast. My name is Rose Jones, and I am just one woman with one voice trying to tell her story and try to be a resource for all you women. So if you are a woman who is struggling to heal and want some resources, or you need a place to feel safe, then you are in the right place. I would love for you to join our community. All you have to do is hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications so you never miss a episode of A Sisters Love podcast. Today we have a beautiful guest. Her name is Dr. O, and I'm going to allow her to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her story and why she's here on today's podcast.
Hello, everybody. Again, as Miss Jones says, my name is, well, I go by Dr. O. My full name is Dr. Olivia West, and I am a international psychologist, a licensed professional counselor, a writer, a coach, and an advocate. Um, in the world of international psychology, I specialize in the area of trauma. And Miss Jones asked how I got here. And it's an ironic kind of story because, unlike many people, this was not the career that I thought I was going to be. And it is not something I grew up with, always wanting to dream of being a therapist, of a psychologist. I just kind of stumbled upon this field and loved it. I have dyslexia and dyscalculia. So for a long time in my grade school years and young adulthood, I did not feel smart enough to go to college. I did not feel smart enough. And so when in high school, I didn't know about much about getting into college. My parents didn't go, didn't have the resources, et cetera, et cetera. And so, additionally, because I didn't feel like I was smart enough, I went into the United States Navy directly out of high school. And I served in the Navy for several years as a military police. And then after getting out of the Navy, I went into law enforcement and worked with Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department in in Tampa, Florida. Um, After being there for several years, my sister had moved to Atlanta and had asked if I could move out here with her to support her as she was having her first child. So I did with the intent to be transferred to the APD. And although I was hired and everything, just before I was getting ready to start the academy, they said they had put on a 2-year hiring freeze for um, every new transfer, every new law enforcement recruit. So stumbling around trying to find what I was going to do to help provide for my family. And I ended up going into private security. And as a director of security, I had one of my colleagues who worked under me. He was in college and he's always asked me, why don't you go back to school? Why don't you go to school? Why don't you go to school? And I was like, nah, no, no. And I never told him why, but it was always still because I felt that I was not smart enough to get into college or to go to college. Um, One day he kept on bothering me, and one day when I went home, I had seen one of those old commercials that was like, call here today if you want to get da 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 da. And so I called and set up an interview. I did not think I was going to, still did not think I was going to get in. I just did it to um, basically to shut him up and to prove that I was not smart enough. But long story short, I got accepted, and I started out with my associate's degree in criminal justice. And during my undergrad is one of the prereqs. Psychology was one of the prereqs that I had to take. And I absolutely fell in love with psychology. And my initial intent was to combine um, my newfound love of psychology with my career in law enforcement and to become a forensic psychologist. But as I was talking to one of the professors who was also a mentor of mine, they said, well, hey, you don't want to become a forensic psychologist. What you actually want to do is become a clinical psychologist and do forensic evaluations. So I said, okay. And I just kept on throughout the journey from my associates to my bachelor's to my master's. And by the time I finished my master's, there was just a lot going on within the my clinical experience, just through what they were teaching us. A lot of things that did not seem to fit for people of color. Everything was very westernized, whitewashed, even in the cultural competency classes. The things that we were being taught as psychologists were still very much stereotypical things, and it was majority of white people telling the black experience or telling the Asian experience, and there was not many researchers in the textbooks that were people of color. And this really bothered me. And so I left after graduating from the master's degree program, I began to seek out another doctoral degree program that was more competent, culturally competent. And when I found out about the international psychology program, I felt that it was a perfect fit because we step away from a lot of the westernized view and take more of the cultural view of embedding everyone into the culture or basing our techniques in psychology behind the individual culture and not what's the western side of things. And so they had a concentration. They only had two concentrations, and one was in trauma. And I've always, been impacted, by that, especially in regards to being, social justice and being an advocate and fighting for equality and equity and things like that. And so um, I really felt that the trauma piece was drawn, I was drawn to it. And so that's brought me, into this degree and where I am today.
That's a beautiful story. I think a lot of people that kind of happened with a lot of people like you go one direction, you end up navigating a whole different direction based on your experience in a certain situation and seeing a need for something and knowing that you can fill that gap is beautiful. So when you was studying, and can you tell the listeners a little bit about the difference that you see in your international studies and then the one that you was the westernized study? Like, what was the difference between what they was trying to give African American or people of color, then how it applies to us different with the international studies that you have?
So the way that I best describe it is that traditional psychology, it is built on and based in traditional white cis heterosexual male philosophy, not even women. That's the foundation of psychology. And so it is, there's this basically this box, right? And if you do not fit inside that box of westernized psychology, then it's based on you have, psychosis or something, wrong. When we're not considering the whole person and the whole thing. And so also in westernized psychology, it is a lot of that white is right mentality. So
Okay.
anything, this is what we say it is, and anything outside of this square box is not right. So in international psychology, we take it a little different. We still take a lot of the concepts and the theories and things like that, whether it's CBT or which is cognitive behavioral therapy, or Gestalt or Adlerian, all these different therapy models, which are great. We take those, and instead of trying to say that the client has to fit into this square box, we take the square box and we fit that around the client. So what I look into is, your culture and your subculture. So not just what a lot of people think about when we say our culture, which is, race or ethnicity. All of those things play a part in our mental health. But when we think about things, for example, I might say, well, I'm a Black woman, you're a Black woman, I know your experience, and therefore I would be a great therapist for you. That's not correct. Yes, we may have some very much similarities, but our life experiences, that it makes us very much different, which are a part of our culture. Where did you grow up? What do you have siblings? Did you grow up in one parent household, two parent household? Are you married, single, or divorced? Do you have children? Are you a college educated? What kind of career do you have? What type of music do you listen to? What's your sexual orientation? What's your religion? All of these things impact who you are and how you function. So if we look at something as simple as cognitive behavioral therapy, where the theory is that our thoughts, our cognitions, and our behaviors are directly connected. If we have positive thoughts, then we're going to have positive behaviors. If we have negative thoughts, then we're going to have negative behaviors. So our thoughts, come from our family, others, and the world around us. That's how we were made up through our values, what we were taught, and et cetera, et cetera. So if, let's just say, there is a Middle Eastern Muslim female who comes into my office and says that she is struggling with depression and anxiety. Just based in westernized psychology, one might, after listening to her story, may say, oh, it's because you're oppressed, and because you don't have your power as a woman, you got to cover up, and you got to cover this, and you got to cover that, and making all of these negative assumptions about Islamic women, and not knowing, no, the depression doesn't have anything to do with her covering. you know her depression has something totally else, totally different, to do with her and her husband's, or her and her partner's relationship. And so unless I dig into that and find out more about your religion, Islam, what does that mean? More about your covering, more about where you was raised, and the concepts and how you was raised, then I can be able to better, treat you. I can see where your thoughts are coming from, what contributed to those thoughts and those upbringings. Now we have, I would say within the most recent years, we have this thing called ACEs. And ACEs stands for adverse childhood experiences. And if you meet the qualifications within the ACEs, they say you're more likely to experience trauma, traumatic stress. Some of the things is being raised in a single parent household, ever have any, parent being, incarcerated, or someone in your family being incarcerated, been exposed to domestic violence, all of these things where a lot of times they're a part of things in communities of color, specifically, I'll say here in America, in Black communities. A lot of us grew up as latchkey kids. A lot of us grew up in single parent households. A lot of us have been exposed to forms of violence. A lot of us have experienced religious church hurt and different things. And so now, more recently, they're looking at and saying how these things impact us as trauma, which I totally can agree with in that aspect. However, what a lot of people don't realize is that once again, the ACEs was developed by two white male researchers. And so it's still in that of others trying to tell us about our experience and not us going and telling and writing about our experience. And so I believe that's the main difference between like westernized psychology and me going into the international side of psychology. I don't try to tell anybody else about their experience. You got to ask them. And then we got to take the work and the research that we've done and see how it fits them according to their experiences, not trying to make them fit into, the research and things of that nature.
Oh, I totally agree. I totally agree because as me going through what I've gone through and I'm healing from my trauma, and then I'm looking at other people like, oh, let me go find a group of Black women that been through what I do. When I let me go find a group of Black women that been through what I've been through and notice like, oh, I can do some of the same treatments that they're doing and realizing why is it not working for me? Why is it not working for me? Because my experience was totally different. Yeah, our experiences are similar, but it's not the same exact experience. So what worked for somebody else may not work for me. And it goes more into not even just the experience and the individual itself. Because
Exactly.
like with me, I have probably undiagnosed ADHD. So a lot of treatments that will work for somebody that doesn't have that wouldn't work for me. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
it's like pulling the whole experience, the person individually, the DNA, all of that comes into account. And a lot of people, like you said, with the Western, we put them in one box. Like, well, if you experience domestic violence, this is the one treatment that should work for anybody experiencing domestic violence. If you have ADHD, this is what you should do with kids that have ADHD. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's the same thing that's the same thing that happened with my son. He has ADHD too. And it's like, well, he needs to be on medicine. He needs to do this. And we're deciding not to do the medication and decided to do a different behavior therapy. And they were like, well, we think is best as medication. I'm like, that doesn't fit everybody else. That doesn't fit him because when he was on medication, it made him feel like a zombie. And
Yeah,
what quality of life is that? So we have to go a different approach. But the doctors and everybody is pushing the same thing over and over and over. And I have to find people that believe in my system or believe in what I want to do for my child.
mhm,
So I totally agree. And I totally agree. Like it's not a one fit all, but base like individual based situation, so like evaluating
exactly.
each person situation based on all aspects of their life and not just what they just not the trauma they experienced but everything as a whole.
Exactly. My intake form is 23 pages.
Ooh.
Yes. And that's because I like to go really into depth. I asked, but I never forget one of the first, he wasn't my client, but he was one of my clinician's clients. And he was Native American. And he sent me a note, an email, and said, I really appreciate your intake form because it's the first time I've ever seen anyone ask about my ethnicity in that nature. It's usually always, just Hispanic, non-Hispanic, black, white,
Mhm.
type of thing. And he said to see on there that you had all the different, kind of cultures, include Native American, and I can check that off. That made me really feel good. So things like that, it's the little things. And as you said, it's, really about the individual and delving down into what works best for them. How old is your son?
He is 13 now.
He's 13.
He's 13. He's going into high school in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What are some of the regimens that you implemented with him?
We're doing like I'm doing breathing treatments with him and just him emotional regulation mostly because he's very high. He's very, very emotional. So he has very like moments of like real quick, like he get very agitated real quick. So I'm really trying to help him stop and breathe, regulate, think a couple seconds before you react and just not letting his emotions control him and him to control his emotions. Like that's like the biggest thing. He's very, very, very impulsive. Very impulsive.
Okay. Okay. Some things that help is journaling because that helps him to focus. So if you have him like journal each day or just write, it doesn't have to be about his feelings. It can be, creative writing or whatever, but that helps with focus and impulsivity. Um, Diet change helps a
Oh yeah,
lot.
I did that. That is hard. For some reason, it's the sugar.
Yeah.
I'm transitioning into like strictly like plant based and like trying to transition the house. He is high on sugar, like because I think it's because of the ADHD because they like it's kind of like regulate him too. They like, well, the doctor's like, well, if you give him sugar or caffeine, it's just kind of like taking medicine. I'm like, well, I don't really want him on that, but it kind of does. I noticed that too. Like if he eats something that's really sweet, he'll be calmer.
Yeah. But see, the thing is that diet, yeah, you're absolutely right. Diet change is really hard. And it's good that you're going to plant-based. I could never do that.
Yeah,
But that would be good for, for like him, because what we realize also is that, even going plant-based, there are still sugars and, a lot of stuff that we don't realize. We can say, oh, I'm gonna cut out the candy and the junk and the sweets, but I'm eating pasta
yeah,
and I'm eating sandwiches, and knowing that no, you have to switch to that nasty Ezekiel bread. You have to, go to maybe like a rice based pasta, or or something like that. Even they'll say like red salt, red dye, red number 5 or whatever is not good. But that's even in regular spaghetti sauce, even organic spaghetti sauce, because tomatoes are red, so you got to cut out tomatoes. um, Increasing legumes. So eating more legumes, adding, I would say, add a supplement of flaxseed oil and fish oil every day. The hard thing about diet change, especially for children, because my son has ADHD as well, is we can do all the diet change and enforce it right here at home.
mm-hmm.
And then they're at school 8 hours of the day,
Mm-hmm.
and they know what they're supposed to eat, but they gonna eat what they want to eat regardless. They're changing lunches with each other. I mean, my son used to bring his lunch to school. He would change with each other. I would find Gatorade bottles and candy wrappers in his backpack because my friend bought it for it, but you're not supposed to be eating that. So
Exactly.
it defeats the purpose. Diet change is really hard. Um, to do. They have to want it, their self. And at this age, when they're in the school age, it's hard when your friend, ain't nobody who eating beans in school.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard with other family members that don't agree with it either. Like, oh, it's torture. Like his grandmother think that it's torture. Like you're torturing him. It's not fair. I'm like, no, I'm really hoping. I'm like, just you will see the results. And like when but you know how people it is that they don't see immediate results. They think
Yeah,
like it's torture or it's not working and stuff like that. It's old school mindset and stuff like that. So like it's really hard. It's really hard when you don't have the family that's backing you also and understanding that you did the research and you're doing it based on what you think is best for your child, based on how you're experiencing the person, and they don't because they don't have to experience them on a day-to-day basis. So they like, I get to have my grandson when it's fun and we get to have fun things and I get to send them back home and they
yeah,
don't see the chaos that we experience.
exactly. And that's hard as well, because then they're going to also allow him to have treats and have fun and do this and spoiling and and all this other kind of stuff. And then you're the one that has to deal with it.
Yeah, I'm the bad guy. I'm the
It,
bad guy.
it's always.
Always, I like even with the dad, even with his dad's like, what are you doing? I'm like, bruh, like, let me handle like I'm already the bad guy. Just let me be the bad guy at this point. They'll thank me later. That's why I keep telling myself every day, like, they'll thank me later. They'll thank me later. They'll thank me later. They think I'm the bad guy now. They'll appreciate it later. That's the only thing that keep me going. Like they'll appreciate me because the backlash that I be getting, like they'll appreciate me later. That's all I have to do. I have to pump myself up every day. They'll appreciate me later.
That's it. But have them find out things as well that, maybe they do agree with and can implement. So if you're working on regulated breathing and things of that nature, see if they are interested in, like getting into any type of meditation or, just working with that, with them,
Yeah.
teaching him, okay, well, you don't got to do everything, but the main thing that we're working on is emotional regulation. But here's some things. Teach him to, teach them like the 5 4 3 2 1 method to help, teach him,
Yeah, he does the
you
score.
know.
I saw like a box, so he breathe like, and then just,
Okay.
yep.
It's square breathing.
Square breathing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Breathe in for
Yeah.
release, breathe in, hold, release,
hmm
and pause.
Yep.
4 seconds.
We
Yeah.
do that one, and I keep him busy. Like he's good at sports, so that's a lot of discipline too. So a lot of focus. So he does football, he does basketball, and so we try to keep him busy.
But that's good too, because that's going to get out a lot of that energy as
hmm
well. And, and keep him tired. But it gives him, as you said, it teaches a lot of discipline.
hmm
And it also, organized sports also teaches him focus.
Yeah,
Because if he's not paying attention, he's going to miss the ball. He's going to miss his turn. He's going to miss whatever. And if they lose that game because of him, he's not going to like it. He's not going to feel, really good about it. So it's going to teach him that he has to, be more focused and paying attention and things of that nature.
yeah,
So
I
organized
totally
sports is
agree.
always really good.
It is. When it comes to like the medication and stuff like that, how do you feel about that when it comes to like treating people that has trauma or ADHD or mental illness? Like, how do you feel? Do you think medication is good, or do you think that like different type of like therapy will work, or you think like they could work together?
I would say, they can work together. It depends on how severe your symptoms are, I would say. So I'm not an advocate for just taking medication and not doing therapy.
Mhm,
Um, I'm usually, for the most part, I've been, hugely against medication because medication only masks. It may make you
mhm.
feel better. It may help you, get up and function, but it's not dealing with what the problem is. It doesn't solve what the problem is. The only way that you can solve what the problem is and figure out what the problem is through therapy by digging it out and working, and working on it. But it's so tough and it's so hard and it's going to interfere with our life. And we know that if we open up these jars, it's going to break us. So it's just easier to take the medication. So, but when you're really ready to do the work, then I would, say we're starting out with therapy. And if you're at a place to where it is, you cannot regulate your emotions, it's just too hard, you can't function, then you're not going to be able to receive any of the things that we teach in therapy. Any of the tools, you're not going to be able to receive them because you're too, distraught, you're too low right now. So what we'll do is use medication to help get you regulated. And once you're at that level to where you're regulated, then and able to receive and able to do the work, because that's another thing, sometimes with therapy is work that you have to do outside of, therapeutic office. And if you're not continuing, don't have the strength or the will or what have you to continue doing those things, then it's going to take longer and longer for you to be in therapy. It's not going to work. And so what we want to do is get you to a baseline. And then once you get stabilized to that baseline, you're able to get some tools and, and different things like that. Then we can start tapering you off that medication and just have you straight on, the coping skills and the skills that you've learned. So that's pretty much what, I believe in regards to medication is if you need them, then definitely taking them with, with doing the work.
Oh, I agree. I agree. I think that's a good way to do it. So you use the medication to help you digest. the information that you're receiving so that you can apply it, so that once you were able to apply it, you can actually slowly remove yourself off the medication. But the medication might be needed for you to actually get started and actually be successful
Yes.
in moving forward in the therapy or the information that you're receiving. I get that. I get that because some people have been through a lot that some like I've been through a lot, and sometimes my thoughts be like drowning me. Like it'd be days
Mm-hmm.
where I'd be in that bed like I'm not getting up today because it's heavy, it's heavy. And like even though it's been years ago, years and past, like it's still heavy. So I
Yes.
totally get it. And those some people I'm able to, like, I could digest it in like a couple hours, but some people might not be able to digest it. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like, and keep moving and keep getting up and getting up. So I totally understand. It depends on the individual and how much they've been through, how much they can fight back. Like I'm willing to fight back. Some people don't have the strength or the ability to fight back against those thoughts and those things that's going on with them.
But
Because a lot of people
also,
been through a lot.
yeah, and it also depends on, what fighting back looks like,
Hmm.
because fighting back to some may be, not letting it take them down and getting up every day and doing what they have to do.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that they've addressed the trauma. What they're doing is, yeah, I can't, focus on these things. If I focus on this trauma, if I do the work in this trauma, if I open up that jar, then I'm going to be in somebody's, mental institution, and a stranger. I can rock it back and forth. I would not be able to function. Would not be able to work. I won't be able to go to school. I won't be able to take care of my kids. I won't be able to, do anything. And so I have to, my fighting back looks like me separating or what's the word?
Dissociating.
Yes, disassociating. Thank you.
Yeah. Hmm.
Disassociating from this. So I can talk to you about my trauma all day because it didn't happen to me because I disassociated from it.
Hmm. Which is
But
bad because
yes, but when I'm
eventually that,
connected to it,
yeah. And then, whew, I did that for a while. And then one day it just, I blew up. Like for certain, like I just kept this social, like this is a separate entity. This is a separate entity. And then all of a sudden, just like I have a full body emotions and I'm just crying. I'm going crazy. I'm like, what's going on? I don't know what's going on. I filled up like your jar got
yeah.
full and you didn't understand
Mm-hmm.
that it was full because you didn't pay it attention. Like I kept putting stuff in this jar, kept putting it in this jar, kept putting it in this
Yeah.
jar, and then all of a sudden the jar was full. I couldn't put nothing else in that jar, so now everything, when I opened it that last time,
Everything
everything
spilled
came
out.
pouring out. Everything
Mm-hmm.
came pouring out, and I was like, oh my god. Oh my God. And I was like, oh, that's when I started doing the work. Like I couldn't hide it no more. I couldn't get rid of it. So I had to start
Yeah.
doing the work. I had no choice
Yeah.
but to deal with this stuff that was overflowing right now. And it was
That's
like
it.
dripping into everything.
When that mason jar, whenever falls off the shelf and it breaks, and all you
Hmm.
have is all your mess all over the place,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, you can't. You're kind of left in a point where, yeah, you can't do anything
Can't do anything.
but
Yeah.
deal with it.
But deal with it. Yeah. Don't get to that point, people. Deal with it now. It's worse to deal with it all at one time. I promise you. Deal with it as it's coming up. Like you don't have to like put it all at one time, but as thoughts and the situations is coming up in your day, deal with it. Write it down. If something a thought come across your mind or you have remembered something, like write it. Like she said, journal. Write it down in the journal, and you can address it later at the end of the day. But just don't leave it be or just push it to the side. Just address it. I promise you it will be beneficial to address it and just try to get to the bottom of why this thought keep coming up, why you keep feeling this situation and why you keep allowing it to control you or why it's interfering with your day-to-day situation. Like it's really important to address those thoughts or those feelings or those moments that are weakness and all that. Like, and it's okay to lay in the bed too, because sometimes our mind and our body need rest. We do need rest. And some people
Absolutely.
think like we don't, you do. It's
No,
okay.
when especially when you're having mental struggles, it takes a lot out of you somatically and physically. You're exhausted, and
Yeah.
that's okay for you to, like you said, lay down and get the rest. There's things that I do with, my clients is one exercise. It's called somatic questioning. So when you're having these negative thoughts, which are negative core beliefs, number one, what we have to know that they're majority of the time they're not related to one singular isolated event that just happened. So, my boss just yelled at me, right? And now um I feel stupid.
Mm.
Well, my thought that I'm stupid did not is not just isolated to what my boss did. So as you said, if I write it down, I go back and I trace it and I
Mhm.
trace through what were other times in my life that I felt not good enough, inadequate, stupid. Oh, I remember that time in, college, I almost failed that test. I remember that time because I had dyslexia. I remember that this, I remember that. And spending time and getting back to that earliest childhood memory of when I spilled some milk in the kitchen and made a huge mess. And a parent came and said, "Oh, you get on my nerves. Get your stupid ass out of the way."
Mm.
And how that embedded in me that I'm stupid and created a core belief that I'm stupid. So because it's never dealt with, and what people don't understand, they're like, "Oh, that's not trauma." Well, it is to that 4 or 5 year old who
It is.
experienced it.
Mhm.
So us as adults, we're able to justify and rationalize, things. Oh, that's just how it was growing up in a black household. You ever seen those memes with DAKFT, da 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 da? And if you know what this means, you was raised in a black
Yeah.
household. And everybody laugh and they're like, "Yeah, I know what that means." And it's a whole bunch of profanities if you don't get your
Yeah.
MF and da da da. And by the time the street lights come on, and they don't realize that, well, what trauma is a threat of death or great bodily harm to yourself or someone else. So when a parent says, you know, "Get your stupid ass out of my face before I knock you in the middle of next week," and I'm 4 years old,
You believe it.
you believe it.
You
I
believe
don't
it.
know.
I
I do
don't know if
know
that's gonna
that
be cleared up. Mhm.
yeah. And so when you believe that, that's threat of death or great bodily harm. So I'm now stuck in this 4 year old spot at 30, 40, 50 years old. And I'm wondering, well, why do I feel stupid? Well, early childhood memory, then went into kindergarten or what have you, and I got my B's mixed up with my D's, and there it goes again. See, told you was stupid. Went into, elementary school, full on fledged. Friends said they didn't want to be my friends anymore. You know how little kids are, 7 years. I ain't your friend. See, I told you was stupid. Told you was unlikable. Told you was unlovable. Told you.
Mhm.
And so now reinforce, reinforce,
Reinforce
reinforce,
that. Mhm.
and not realizing that that's what's really embedded in me. So when I make a mistake at work, my boss says something, the reason why this one little thing may take me down to a spiral is because it's not this one little thing. What's coming up for me is all of those emotions and what I truly believe about myself. I'm
Yep.
stupid. I'm inadequate. I'm a failure. I'm less than. And so, sometimes what happens is we'll have these thoughts all the time. They're called automatic thoughts, but a lot of us are able to bounce back from them without them, affecting our day. You ever walk past a mirror or something and like, "Oh, damn, I'm fat." But you just it's just a passing thought, you
Yeah.
know? Or you're walking around your house looking for your keys and your keys are in your hand. And you're like, "I'm so stupid." It's a passing thought. We know that rational mind, we know that we're not fat or we know that we're not stupid. But that irrational mind, when it really hits us, when we put on our clothes and we're looking and we just can't get over the fact that I done gained 20 pounds. It's really embedded in me. It's in that core belief.
Yeah.
So even when we don't think that it is a big deal because we were like, oh, well, I know I would, that was just, no, that's still your core belief. And so you should still analyze that, spend some time with sitting back and thinking. And when we do this erratic questioning, what we do is we break down a thought. What is the evidence for this thought?
Mhm.
What is the evidence against this thought? And keep on going through down the line, just, checking it and seeing. And what it does once you get down to the end of the erratic questioning, what I like to tell my clients is it's like when you're at the top and when you're at the beginning, you're heightened, you're on a cliff, you're at 10, you're ready to jump off. And all this erratic questioning does is help you to walk off the ledge just a little bit. It's not going to get you to a zero.
Yeah.
Not the first time, not one time, but it's going to take you off that 10. It's going to take you to that 9 or to that 8, a place to where you can breathe a little, as you said,
Hmm.
stop, breathe, and think. And then if you keep on practicing and practicing it every day, then eventually it's going to take you back, continuing going down from 10 to 8 to 6, down to that 0. But it takes time and it takes dedication. And most of us aren't disciplined enough or don't
Yeah.
want to be disciplined enough to really be committed to that.
That's true. That's true. And another thing I wanted to say when you were saying like when we go back to our childhood and stuff like that, with my kids, I try to address like when you say, "Oh, you're stupid," instead of saying address calling the individual, address the situation like, "Oh, you made a stupid decision," not
Mm-hmm.
you are stupid. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
nobody is stupid. You know what I'm saying? We make bad choices. You know what I'm saying? So let them know like you are still loved. You still are whole. You still are a whole person. But even though you're a whole person, we're still capable of making bad choices. And what you just did was a bad choice. Or next time if they do something that doesn't make sense, explain to them how they can make a better choice. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
don't make people feel bad about what they did, or express it in a way that lifts them up instead of breaks them down. You know what I'm saying? Because I remember as a child, like being called all types of names, and the parents saying like, "Oh, don't take it personal. I didn't mean it like that," but it meant a lot to me. You know what I'm saying? Like it didn't mean nothing to you because you said it, you moved on with your life, but that stays with you, with that person that you told forever. And people forget that they say things to people like, "Oh, you're still mad about that." I
Yeah.
said that 3 years ago. Why are you still holding? I said, because you are somebody that I care about. And you said something that meant something to me. And people don't understand that people carry, especially for somebody they love, their mom or their dad or their caretaker
Mm-hmm.
said something. They're going to take it to heart because they feel like that's how you really see them on a
Yeah.
daily basis. And they probably don't see you like that. You made a stupid decision and they said the wrong words to express that.
Yeah. If you're my mom, you're my dad, you're the people that's supposed to love me infinitely because you're the one that brought me in this world. You're the one that loves me more than anybody else in this world. And you call me out my name, then it must be true.
Yep.
Then it must be
Because if
true.
you love me, especially if you heard it outside the house and then you come inside the house, it says like, so it must be what they were saying out there must be true because now I'm
Mm-hmm.
in the house with people I love and see me different and they saying the same exact thing. So I
Yeah.
guess all of everything
It's
that I've been
true.
hearing is true.
Mm-hmm. It's
Another
true.
reinforcement. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, before we end this episode, is there any advice or anything that you want to tell listeners before we close this out?
So I will always give advice to say, if you're struggling, seek, go out there and, seek and speak with someone, a professional. There's many platforms out there now that makes therapy very affordable. And at any time, if you find you a good therapist, always don't, shy away if you feel like it's too expensive. Always ask them, do they have a sliding scale fee or pro bono? Because most therapists, especially a lot of us therapists of color, will work with you, especially if you don't have insurance or we don't accept your insurance, we'll definitely work with you. So please go to Psychology Today or Therapy Den or Therapy for Black Girls. Therapy for Black Men, clinicians of color, all of these platforms you can go to and find, a therapist that is, that is of your ethnicity, that is of your, sexual orientation, that maybe have your other similarities that may make you feel, most comfortable in working with them. If you want to work with me or one of my 24 clinicians that work under me, and you are located in the state of Georgia, you can please check us out by going to our website at outoftheboxccc.com. That's out, OUT of OF, the THE box, BOX, followed by three C's for counseling, coaching, and consulting.com. You can reach out to me directly at, you can find me at Dr. West on all social media platforms. So that's DRWEST. And if you want to email me directly, you can email me at Olivia at outoftheboxccc.com. Or don't forget to call our office. And our office number is 404-900-9583. But don't hesitate to get the help that you need or that you want. And also, we got to remember that it's also not about us. We're going to be breaking generational curses and generational chains because there's things that we're learning that maybe our parents didn't know and didn't learn. And so we have to be the ones to not carry that on to the next generation. We got to break the curses of, oh, that's white people parenting, and oh, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. And, Black people, we parent like this. No, there's healthy parenting, period. There is a, in between how people believe that traditionally other races raise their children and traditionally, we raise our children and things like that. But we don't want to, when you look back over your life and you think about the definition as I gave to it and the traumatic things or things that you may have not denoted as trauma. But you're looking back over them now and you're considering and you're like, uh-huh. Now think of how you are as a parent and what you're passing on to your children. And let's break that cycle.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on, Dr. O. And that's it for today's episode, my beautiful sisters. And I will see you guys next week.
Thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait to come back again.
Well, that's it for this episode of a Sisters Love podcast. But before we end, I would love to invite you to our exclusive support group. It's called a Sisters Love Support Group. And inside this group, you'll get access to resources, challenges, and some of our beautiful guests that you hear on this podcast is inside this group that can help guide you and give you advice if needed. And it's just a safe place for you to vent and get that healing or that community that you need that is needed when we are healing. So if you are interested in being part of the group, all you have to do is subscribe to our mailing list and you'll get instant access to our support group. So all you have to do is click the link below and see you next week for our other episode of a Sisters Love podcast. Bye bye, my beautiful sister.